Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation I received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, what's the number one exercise that will give you abs fast? Number one exercise that will give you abs fast, diet and exercise as a whole. There's no such thing as spot reduction, which means you can't sit there and train your abs for 45 minutes, 60 minutes a day and hope that you're going to get this crazy ripped six pack. It's not going to happen. If you have a layer of fat covering your midsection, even if you have fantastic abs, you're never going to see those abs. So the diet is key. The exercise is key. Together, they're crucial. Okay. And why I say exercise, I don't just mean abdominal exercises. I mean, you need to do your squats. You need to do your bench press. You need to do your lunges. You need to do your rows, your lat pull downs. You need to do your curls. All that stuff correlates. It all helps you build a strong core. It helps you burn calories. It helps you build muscle and it helps you burn fat. Okay. The less fat you have, the more predominant your midsection is going to be. Now, there are ab exercises that I find to be more effective than others, yes, especially when you put them in conjunction with one another. So, whenever I do my abs, I like to do a mini ab circuit. So, I'll do like hanging leg raises in conjunction with, say, sit ups. So, I'm working both my transverse abdominals in addition to my rectus abdominals. I find that's a really good burn. With clients, sometimes I'll give them a circuit that's going to contain lying leg raises with reverse crunches, bicycle crunches, towel crunches, and then some hanging leg raises as well. And we'll do that 2 or 3 times. That won't take long though. I always tell people don't spend more than 5, 10 minutes working on your midsection. Why? Because you're already working on your midsection throughout the rest of your workout. If you're doing squats properly, you're working your core. If you're doing deadlifts correctly, you're working your core. So you're always involving your core to some extent, but you're never going to see those abs unless you get your diet dialed in. So that's why I say the diet and exercise together is going to help what's going to build that six pack. It's going to allow you to see your transverse abdominals, rectus abdominals, intercostals, and obliques. Of course, don't forget genetics play a role. Some people genetically just have better looking abdominals than others. Some people have better looking biceps, better looking quadriceps, better looking back, better glutes. Those are your genetics. So, fortunately, you can't choose your genetics. But as long as you've dialed in your diet and you are training correctly in the gym, as in training properly with exercise sequencing, making sure you're following a proper training split, you should be able to see your abs without having to spend an hour a day in dieting to severe caloric deficits in order to just see one or two abdominals stick out. All right, next question. Nick, is it possible to get a decent looking body without ever setting foot in the gym? I enjoy running and hiking, but I really get bored lifting weights. At the same time, I would like to add on more muscle and definition to my body. Of course, you can get a decent looking body without going to the gym. There's a lot of people walking around the planet who've got great looking physiques and they don't lift weights, right? It is possible. By running and hiking, I imagine you're maintaining a relatively lean physique. However, if you want to build and sustain muscle, as in that solid, lean, dense muscle, you have to lift weights. There's no way around it. You can't build muscle without weight training. You know, the people out there will say, well, no, you can build muscle by running and swimming. No, you can't. You can build strength, but you're not going to build that muscle that people really notice. You're not going to build biceps that actually have veins sticking out of them, right? You're not going to build striations in your glutes. You're not going to build quadriceps that when you pull up your shorts or if you're wearing like a bikini or you're wearing just anything like where you're wearing at the beach where you can really see your legs, nice lean toned legs. That comes from lifting weights. So you can't get around that. No. But of course you can have a decent looking physique without lifting weights. You know, there's a lot of people out there that do. But if you want to build muscle, like what you're saying, and you want to really fill out your shirts, have that solid, lean, dense look, you need the extra resistance that weightlifting provides. Without it, you're not going to get that look. So there's really no way around that. No surgeries. There's no like going on these massive cardio kicks where you're going for 2 hour runs or you're going for these hikes. Like I said, you're going to build cardiovascular endurance. Hell, you're even going to build some muscular endurance and you're going to get stronger, but you're not going to build a physique where someone looks at it and goes, wow, this person has muscle. They might just see someone who is in good shape, and that's fine. If that's your goal, you don't have to lift weights. But if you want to transform your physique and you want to add on that solid, lean, dense muscle, you need to get in the gym. You need to lift weights. There's no way around it. All right, next question. Nick, how can I lose fat in just 2 weeks? Are there any quick fixes that actually work? Listen, there are. And I'm telling you this from someone who has dieted for contests and has trained people who were a little behind schedule over those last 2 or 3 weeks. And we had to kind of do damage control. But the problem with doing damage control, it's not sustainable. So I don't advise people to do this unless they absolutely have to get ready for, let's say, a bodybuilding show, maybe it's a photo shoot, and they're behind schedule. Okay, because this has happened to people I've worked with in the past. It's even happened to me. And here's the thing, when you do this type of dieting, because it really comes down to the diet, it's extreme and it can give you very low energy, can affect your sleep, can affect your hormone levels. So this is why I don't advise people to do crash course diets. Will they work? Yes. Will they work long term? No. So to answer this question, what I would typically do with someone if they're behind schedule and let's say they're getting ready for a bodybuilding show, I'll put them on what we call like a protein veg diet, which essentially is means what it sounds, protein and vegetables. That's it. No carbs, no fats, and honestly, it feels like crap because all you're really having, to give you an idea, would be like chicken breasts and broccoli. Okay. But it works because A, you're going to be in a caloric deficit. B, because you're taking in protein, you're still going to be able to maintain and sustain muscle for that period of time when you are in a severe caloric deficit because your protein will still be relatively high. But without the carbohydrates and the fats, you're going to go into somewhat of a caloric deficit and you're going to lose body fat very quickly. Okay. So that's an effective strategy if the goal is to just lose body fat and maintain preserved muscle, but it's not one that I would recommend long term. And it's honestly not one that I would recommend unless you yourself are behind schedule. So if you're asking me this because you're getting ready for a competition and you say, oh my God, I'm way behind schedule and I need to lose another 4 or 5% body fat, this can be done. In addition to the diet, the cardio needs to be increased. So I've had people go as high as 2 hours a day when they're behind schedule. But here's the thing, you never want to get to the point where you're behind schedule. And take it from someone who has been behind schedule for 1 or 2 shows. Once you've been there, you don't want to do it again because it's like hell week. That's what I call it, hell week. It's going 1 or 2 weeks of severe dieting, severe cardio. It's crazy. And it's something that I really advise people not to do. Okay. So can it be done? Yes. Should you do it? No. For the reasons I said, it can really have negative impacts on your hormonal levels, on your metabolism, on your thyroid, it affect your sleep, affect your mood. So it's just something I wouldn't recommend. The best way to do it, give yourself lots of time. So as in like if you say, okay, well, I'm trying to get ready for a bodybuilding show, or maybe I'm trying to get ready for a beach vacation where I'm going to have my shirt off, or I'm going to be in a bikini all day. Give yourself a good 16 weeks. So you give yourself 4 months and you can cruise into that event and you can drop your calories slowly if you need to. I always tell people if we don't have to drop your calories at all, and we can just maybe increase your cardio, increase your weightlifting, as in like how many times a week you're in the gym, and leave your calories alone, we're great. Okay, one thing I always tell my clients, if we can eat lots of food and still lose body fat, this is a perfect formula. And this is a formula we have to stick with. Okay, so by giving yourself enough time and implementing an effective strategy, you're going to allow yourself to lose that body fat and you're not going to have to suffer. You're not going to have to go on these severe caloric reductions. You're not going to have to do hours of cardio every day. Okay, you don't have to change your whole lifestyle. Best of all, when you get those results, you can sustain those results because you didn't do anything too extreme. So to answer that question, can you lose body fat in 2 weeks? Absolutely. Follow the protein veg diet, do 1 or 2 hours of cardio a day, you will lose body fat. Absolutely. And you'll probably be able to preserve some muscle too, as long as you're keeping your protein high. But make no mistake, it's going to have some negative consequences afterwards. So it's something I do not advise anyone to do. All right. Nick, how do you transfer your body? Oh, sorry. Nick, how do you transform your body without starving yourself or counting calories? I'm getting frustrated with not seeing results and I'm always feeling hungry. I'm going to imagine if you're always feeling hungry, this is why you're not losing weight. You most likely have put yourself in too far of a caloric deficit. Now, when you do that, your metabolism does slow down to some degree. Why? Well, our bodies are very smart. They're very resilient. So if you start taking in fewer and fewer calories, your body says, "Oh, hold on a second. I've got to hold on to these calories for a long period of time." So what happens is you start breaking them down and utilizing them less and less. So your output is not as much as it would be if you were constantly feeding your body with nutrients. And this is why I advise people to have that 5 to 6 meals a day, right? Small meals throughout the day. So you're never hungry, but you're also never full. And that's another thing too. I always tell people you should never be full. I always like to be a little hungry. So if you've ever watched my meal prep videos, my meals are very small. For a guy my size, I mean, I'm doing 1 cup of rice and like 6 ounces of chicken. That's nothing. I'm 210, 215 pounds. That's not a lot of food. But smaller meals work better for me because they just keep me going throughout the day. So you never want to be full to the point where you're feeling stuffed. At the same time, you don't want to be constantly hungry to the point where you're starving. Okay. Because if you are starving, like I said, your body will naturally slow down its metabolism. So it's not a good idea to do that. Okay. So I wouldn't recommend starving yourself. And this is most likely why you're not seeing results. Because if you're starving yourself, your energy levels are going to be very low. If your energy levels are low, your strength's going to be low in the gym. If your strength is low in the gym, you can't build muscle because you can't lift weights, or at least heavier weights. So it's very important that when you are, and I hate using the word dieting, but when you are dieting, that you're implementing an effective strategy and you're not just counting calories. You're looking at the macronutrients and also, more importantly, the micronutrients, the quality of the food that you're consuming. This is so important. This is why I use that comparison of your body to a luxury car. You're not going to put shitty gas in a BMW, right? You're going to put premium gas. So treat your body the same way. You want to put in good whole food sources. Don't put in crap, okay? And don't go on these extreme diets. I'm not working with you, but if I was, I'd have to look at your diet and I'd be able to give you a better answer because the first thing you're telling me is that you're hungry. And when someone tells me they're constantly hungry, right there, I know something's wrong with their diet. And I get a lot of people that work with me online and they've said the same thing to me. They're like, I don't know, I can't lose weight. I'm starving. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take over your diet. And the first thing I do, I increase their calories. And every time they come back to me, I go, are you crazy? I'm trying to lose weight and you're giving me more food. I said, just trust me. And it always works, always, because the person, what they've been doing is they've been in such a caloric reduction, a caloric deficit, I should say. And most people are doing tons of cardio. They've just slowed down their metabolism to a halt. So what I do is I implement more food, take down the cardio, and their body can relax, and therefore it lets go of the fat. Okay. It works. I promise you it works. It seems like it's a crazy. It doesn't seem like it's going to work, but years and years of doing this to people, it always works. Okay. Unless you have a thyroid condition, in that case, you should be on something like Synthroid, it will work. Okay. So you have to implement an effective strategy. If you'd like help with your diet, email me, nick@foreverfitperformance.com. I'm happy to help you. I work with tons of people online. We do weekly check-ins, bi-weekly check-ins. You can ask me questions any time of the week. I get back to all emails within 24 hours, always. Usually get back to emails within an hour or two, but I always answer every email within 24-hour time period. So email me and let's work on your diet together. Okay. Nick, you mentioned that it's possible to lose fat and build muscle at the same time. Can you please explain how this is possible, though? Because I've always thought you have to lower your calories to lose fat and increase your calories to build muscle. How can both be done at the same time? They both can be done at the same time because you do not have to lower your calories to lose fat, nor do you have to increase your calories to build muscle. You have to lower your calories if you want to lose weight, and you have to increase your calories if you want to increase your weight. Okay, now what do I mean by that? Well, if you're looking at the number on the scale, sure, you go into a caloric deficit, you'll lose weight. But is it going to be quality weight? How much of that weight is going to be muscle and water? And how much of it's going to be body fat? Okay. If you increase your calories and the number on the scale goes up, how much of that weight is going to be quality weight? How much of it's going to be muscle and water? And how much of it's going to be body fat? Okay, so this is what I mean. And I've always said it's easy to lose weight, it's easy to gain weight. It's a little bit more complex to lose fat and build muscle because you're trying to change your body composition as a whole. Okay. So in order to lose fat and build muscle at the same time, you have to forget about calories. Okay. It's not that calories are completely irrelevant, but you have to forget about them. You have to put them on the back burner. You have to change your mindset and think, okay, I have to look more importantly, again, just like the last question, my macronutrient intake. And everyone's different. And what I mean by that is some people I work with respond really well to low carbohydrates, higher fat diets. Other people respond better to higher carbs, low fat diets. Everyone to a degree, protein stays consistent. Okay, I don't like to go too high on protein for the kidneys, but at the same time, I don't like to go too low because then it's hard to build muscle. Okay, so macronutrients, especially fats and proteins, actually carbohydrates too, they're all misunderstood in my opinion to the general population because people think carbs are bad, people think fats are bad, people think you need to have all this protein, and they don't understand dietary nutrition. Once you have a good grasp of dietary nutrition, you can really control where your physique goes. If you want to build muscle, if you want to burn fat, if you want to do both at the same time. If you don't have a general understanding of that, it's very difficult. And I remember when I first started training with weights, I loved going to the gym, but I didn't know anything about dietary nutrition. And I swear, if I had known more about dietary nutrition for my first 3 to 4 years of training, I would have gotten better results. But once I learned about dietary nutrition, I started to dial in my diet. I really noticed my physique changed. I noticed my body fat got lower. I noticed my muscle mass got higher. And all I did was change my diet. My training stayed the exact same. So you have to get that calorie counting out of your head. Okay. Especially if the goal is to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. So, how it can be done is by implementing a nutritional plan that makes sense. And it has to make sense for your body type, your activity level, and your genetics. Sometimes that does come down to working with a reputable and knowledgeable coach because someone who's done this for 20, 30 years has a good understanding of how the human body works. And even though everyone's body is different, there are some general rules to follow. And like I said, I usually start most people off with a generic protocol and then I tweak it and make revisions along the way based on how their results are looking on a weekly basis. Okay. And whether I'm working with a male versus female, age is a factor, lifestyle is a factor, fitness level, and so on. Right. But it can be done. And like I said last week on the channel, I've done it myself and I've done it with people before. But you have to get the calorie counting out of your head if you truly want to change your body composition. Okay. Nick, what's the fastest way to build lean muscle? And can I do it without taking steroids? You can absolutely do it without taking steroids. Will you get the same results as someone who takes steroids? Absolutely not. No, you're not going to look like Mr. Olympia because Mr. Olympia takes steroids. Everyone on that Mr. Olympia stage takes steroids. So you're not going to look like those bodybuilders on stage. Okay. So if that's your goal and that you want to look like that person, my recommendation to you, if you're not going to take steroids, change that goal. Try to look for a more realistic and attainable physique. Okay. So someone who doesn't take steroids. Okay. But it can be done. Of course, it can be done. Now, how do you do that? Well, you put together a training split that makes sense. My recommendation, follow a bodybuilding training split because if you're trying to transform your physique, bodybuilding training splits work. CrossFit, to a degree, it's going to make you stronger and more fit, but it's not necessarily going to transform your physique. If you want to build and sculpt the muscles, you need to do bodybuilding because bodybuilding you're using all different types of angles, all different types of planes and ranges of motion. When you're doing training techniques like CrossFit or I think it's the FST or the F45 training, like I'm not saying those are bad training, Orange Theory. I'm not saying any of that's bad, but it's not going to sculpt your muscles. So this is why I'm a huge advocate of bodybuilding training splits for people who truly want to transform their physiques and they want to build round shoulders. They want to build detailed pecs if they're guys. They want to build higher glutes if they're women, right? They want to build bigger biceps if they're guys. They want to build leaner legs if they're women. So like if you want to sculpt your physique like an artist and you want to create your body like a canvas, you have to bodybuild. Okay. So it's not me telling people to not do CrossFit, not do Orange Theory. Like I said, not do Pilates. You can do all three. I think all three are great. I have nothing, well, maybe not so much CrossFit, but if you watch me over the years, you know my whole my opinion on CrossFit. However, if you enjoy CrossFit, do it. Will it transform your physique? In my opinion, no. I haven't really seen many people out there who do CrossFit who've transformed their physique. I mean, they look great for sure, but they're not building muscle because To build muscle and to sculpt muscle and create more detail in your physique, you need to implement those angles. You need to implement those planes and ranges of motion that I've spoken about in the past. Without that, you can't really build that detailed, defined physique. Okay, so bodybuilding training splits work best. So if you want to build lean, solid, dense muscle, I recommend a bodybuilding split, and that split will depend on how often you yourself can get to the gym. I talked about this on the channel last week, so if you didn't check out last week's Q&A, go check it out. I talked about training splits. If you're in the gym 3 times a week, a good split would be chest and back day one, shoulders and arms day two, legs and abs day three. Okay. If you're in the gym twice a week, you could do one upper body day, one lower body day. If you're on a 5-day training split, you could give more volume to each muscle group with chest day one, back day two, shoulders day three, biceps and tris day four, legs and abs day five. Take the weekend off. So you can put together a training split based on how often you yourself can get into the gym, how long you can spend in the gym. But in my opinion, a bodybuilding split will always work best if the goal is to transform your physique and sculpt those muscle bellies. Okay. Okay, a few more questions here. Nick, I've heard you say that there's no such thing as spot reduction because there's not. However, recently I've seen a lot of trainers talking about effective strategies that will help target belly fat directly. Do you think that this is possible? No, I think that this is clickbait. Okay. I've seen this too. Listen, you cannot spot reduce. We've known this for decades. There's no such thing as spot reduction. Unless you go for liposuction, it's not going to happen. Okay. That in my mind right now, that's the only thing that in my mind will work is liposuction. That's spot reduction. But by exercising and dieting, there's no such thing as spot reduction. You don't get to choose your genetics. So what I mean by that in this scenario is you don't get to choose where your body's going to lose fat from first. I work with hundreds of people, both online and in person. And if I put two different people on the same diet plan, same training program, they will have very different results. Okay. Because some people lose fat first in their face. Some people lose it first in their legs. Some people will lose it in their midsection first. Some people in their lower back. Everyone is different. Okay. So you can't choose where you're going to lose fat from first. And so if you're that person who's doing 45, 60 minutes of abs every day, hoping to get a lean midsection and get rid of that belly fat, it's not going to happen. If you're that person doing an hour of cardio a day, hoping to get rid of that belly fat, it might happen, but it might not happen right away. You might lose fat first from your glutes. You might lose fat first from your legs. You might lose fat first from your face. Everyone is different. If you're following a sustainable plan, though, and you're losing fat on a weekly basis, well, you'll eventually lose fat from that midsection. So, for example, for me, when I used to get ready for shows, the first place I'd always lose body fat was my face, always my face. People knew I was getting ready for a show within the first 2 weeks because I'd lose fat in my face right away. The last place, though, for me was always my lower back. That's where I struggled. And that could just be genetics. I have more fat cells in my lower back than I do in my midsection, in my face, and my legs. Okay. I don't hold any fat in my legs whatsoever. So again, that's my genetics. I work with tons of women, though. When I put them on a diet, they lose weight in their midsection right away. But the glutes, hamstrings, and thighs, a little bit different. But if you're following a plan that is, like I said, is sustainable and you're losing fat on a weekly basis, once you start losing fat from all the places at first, like your face, your lower back, your legs, glutes, wherever, it's going to eventually come from that midsection. So you have to keep following the plan. Okay, you have to stay consistent and you have to constantly keep focused on what your end goal is. So unfortunately, you can't spot reduce. You can't choose where the fat's going to come off first. But if you're still following the same program and you're losing fat overall from your physique, you will eventually lose the fat from the troubled spots. It will come. Okay. Like I said, a lot of women I work with, sometimes the last like 2 or 3 weeks of the diet, that's when the fat starts to come off the lower body for them. Okay. Because there's nowhere else for the fat to come off. Their midsection is lean, the lower back's lean. There's no fat in their arms. That's where it's going to come from. Okay. The guys, it's unfortunately for a lot of guys, it's the midsection is the last place for them. And again, it could just be just because your genetics, you have more fat cells in your abdominal region. Okay. So like I said, you can't choose your genetics and you can't spot reduce. So any of these trainers out there who are talking about targeting belly fat, it's clickbait. It can't be done. Okay. And if it can be done, I would like to see scientific research backing these claims. Not bro science, scientific data backing these claims because I've yet to see that. And all my years of doing this, coming up close to 25 years now, I've never seen anyone spot reduce. Okay. So if it's out there, someone send me some scientific data on this, and maybe I'll change my stance. But for now, no spot reduction. Implement a strategy that works. Be patient. You will lose that fat eventually from your belly fat. It might not come off right away, but it will come off as long as you're following a strategy that's effective and allowing you to lose fat on a weekly basis. All right. Okay. Nick, what do you think is more important for fat loss? A lot of fat loss questions today. Diet or exercise? Well, the obvious answer is both. But honestly, I would go with diet because there's a lot of people who I see in the gym who go to the gym and they work out really hard. But when it comes to their diet, and I did mention this last week, the diet is crap. They're going to Chipotle's, they're going to Tim Hortons, they're going to Starbucks. You know, this is all stuff that you want to avoid if the goal is to lose fat. Most people, if your goal is to lose fat, you should be cooking your meals because when you cook your own meals, you know what you're putting in those meals. You know how much oil you're adding. You shouldn't be adding oil unless it's extra virgin olive oil or maybe macadamia nut oil. Okay. You know your portion sizes. You might be having half a cup of rice as opposed to 2 or 3 cups of rice if you go for sushi, right? So you want to make sure that when you are trying to lose fat, that 90% of the food that you eat on a daily basis, you know exactly what's in it. Because when you stop losing fat, you know exactly where to make changes. So whenever I work with someone on their nutritional plan, I know exactly where to make the changes if we hit a plateau. I'm like, oh, you didn't lose any weight this week. So I think I might need to drop your carbs, increase your fats, and rotate your protein. Okay. Or maybe you lost too much weight this week, which tells me that you're most likely losing some muscle as well. So maybe I need to increase your fats, increase your protein, and decrease your carbohydrates. Again, it will depend on the individual, obviously. But diet makes a huge difference when it comes to fat loss. Exercise is, of course, important. That's why I said the obvious answer is both. But I would actually gear more towards the diet than the training because I can tell you from working with people who train with me either in person or online and don't follow a great diet, they do make changes in their physique. I mean, they add on muscle because I put them on a training program that's going to allow them to build solid, lean muscle. However, they do have layers of fat covering that muscle because they're the people who are ordering from Kentucky Fried Chicken. They're the people who are having burgers and fries. They're the people who are drinking alcohol every day or maybe every second or third day. Okay. So if you want to see dramatic changes in your physique, you have to dial in your diet. Okay. And it doesn't have to be boring. You know, you can actually implement a diet that's actually nutritious, but at the same time tastes good. And I've been doing this for years, and you don't have to eat like me, but I found strategies that work for people and how you can enjoy your meals, implement cheat meals throughout the week, whatever. So you can still go out for dinner, you can still go out for lunches, you can still go out for coffee, whatever, but it's still controlled. And the majority of your meals are portioned because this is the one thing I tell people. If you're not practicing proper portion control, I don't care how healthy you're eating. If your goal is to lose fat, you're not going to lose fat because you need to implement a strategy again that's effective. And an effective strategy is one that offers portion control. So, yes, I do recommend weighing out your meals. I do recommend measuring out your carbohydrates, like your rice. I do. And it takes seconds to do it. And that way, if you stop seeing results, you know exactly where to make those changes because you've been keeping track. It's not OCD, especially if your goal is to transform your physique. If your goal is to transform your physique, you have to take it seriously. Okay, if you're not taking it seriously, why bother? Be okay with the status quo. But if you truly want to lose fat and build muscle, you have to dial in your diet. And in my recommendation, in my opinion, you need to practice portion control. And therefore, my recommendation is to make sure that you are using a food scale and that you are measuring at least 90% of the food that goes into your body. Okay. Uh, Last question. Nick, I'm sorry if this question has been asked before, but is it true that eating late at night leads to weight gain? I have been asked this question before, and it's okay. It's a good question. I've been asked it a few times, and there's no scientific data, again, backing this claim. This has been brought to you by Bro Science. Okay, more bro science bullshit. Eating late at night will not make you gain weight. Eating bad food at night will make you gain weight, but eating bad food at 11 o'clock in the morning will make you gain weight. The whole ideology behind this theory is people, or not people, I should say, I think it was the bros, so the bro science would say if you eat a heavy meal and you go to bed, your body's going to store it as fat. Well, if you eat a heavy lunch and then you go sit at a desk for 4 or 5 hours and work at a computer, guess what? Your body's still going to store it as fat because sitting here doesn't burn more calories than me sleeping in there. In fact, sleeping burns more calories than sitting. So that argument's completely ridiculous because you actually burn more calories sleeping than you do sitting. So the key here is movement. Now, do you want to eat a lot of food, a heavy meal at night? Probably not, because it's going to disrupt your sleep. Because don't forget, when you eat, your body's breaking down that food. So if you have a big meal and you go to bed, you might not sleep very well. Okay, so that's the reason I recommend people don't have big meals before they go to bed. But it has nothing to do with fat gain or fat loss or any of that nonsense. Okay, the whole no carbs after six or any of that garbage. Okay, that is bro science at its finest. It's an old school mentality. The way I look at it with diet, if I give someone 6 meals, I'll give them those 6 meals and I say, I don't care when you have those meals, as long as you get all six of those meals within a 24-hour period. This makes it very easy for people because everyone has different lifestyles. Some people wake up at 6 in the morning, some people go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so this makes it very easy for someone who has, let's say, works night shifts and day shifts and maybe their schedule is not as consistent. I say, I don't care when you have those meals, just get them in within a 24-hour window. Okay. Another thing I tell clients is I don't even care what order you have those meals in. If you want to have meal five, which might be like salmon and brown rice for breakfast, have it. I could care less. If you want to have oatmeal for dinner, do it. Okay. The more flexible you are with your diet, the better off you're going to be at sticking to your diet. And it's going to become more sustainable and more realistic to maintain that diet. Okay. Our nutritional plan. I really don't like using that word diet, but if you are using that type of mindset as you approach your nutritional plan, you're going to be successful. Okay. So if you're someone who's not very hungry in the morning, I have a lot of people who will train with me in the morning or train for our trainers in the morning and they don't eat. They train fasted. And I've always told them that's fine. As long as you feel good and your energy levels are good and your strength is good, I have no problem with you training fasted whatsoever. I'm not going to tell you you have to eat something in the morning. Okay. You might be someone who prefers to eat later on in the day. That's just the way that your metabolism works. That's just the way that your lifestyle works. Do it. Just make sure that you're following the plan accordingly and getting in all the proper nutrients. But don't worry about eating late at night. Okay. Again, the reason why I don't recommend eating close to bedtime is because it might disrupt your sleep because your body is breaking down that food. So I generally recommend people try, if they can, to refrain from eating big meals at least an hour before bed. Or if you're going to have something right before you go to bed, have something like a protein and fat, like a whey isolate protein powder with some peanut butter. Okay, so something that's not too heavy on the carbs. But I promise you, it has nothing to do with gaining fat. You're not going to gain more fat because you're eating late at night. Zero scientific data backing this. How you gain fat is if you eat too much and you're not exerting enough energy, you're not moving enough. So you need to move. Okay. So that means you need to work out, you need to exercise. My recommendation, people exercise every day. I truly don't believe you can overtrain unless you're doing the same thing every day. So when I say exercise every day, one day could be lifting weights, one day could be going for a swim, one day could be going for a run, one day could be going for Pilates, but you're moving your body every day. If you do that, you can eat any time of day. You're not going to get fat as long as you're eating a good diet too. So you're following a good nutritional plan. But yes, you can eat at night. You don't have to worry about putting on weight. However, if you are living a sedentary lifestyle, I don't care what time of day you're eating. If you're not moving, you're going to gain weight. Okay? There's no way around it. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, April the 7th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, as well as our in-house coaching business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and feedback that I receive from each and every one of you. Thank you all again and have a great week. Bye for now.